go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ASCII Anything presented by Moser Consulting. I'm your host, Daniel Leon, Moser's Director of Personnel. We're glad that you're with us for this episode of ASCII Anything because today we're diving into a topic that sits at the crossroads of innovation and impact, tech for good. And to do that, we have Moser's Director of Sales and Marketing, Malinda Lowder. She's joining us again. Hi, Malinda.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be back, especially on something that is so close to my heart, technology and using it for good, for charities, and for helping our communities.
Yes, and technology often gets a bad rap for being distractive or divisive, but it's also one of the most powerful tools we have to make the world better. From digital fundraising and accessibility tools to data-driven decision-making and social connection, technology is reshaping how we solve problems and care for one another. So today we're exploring how technology can help us reconnect with each other, with our communities, and with those who might otherwise be left behind. I want to jump right in because you've been working with nonprofits for a little bit over 3 decades, and you've seen massive shifts in how they use technology. So to start us off, what are some of the most remarkable changes you've witnessed in that time?
Yeah, it has been a long time when I think back on it, because I started my career just in regular marketing and advertising. I was doing ads for a sports company, doing some things in that thing. And then I got a job at United Way of Central Indiana. So United Way obviously is a huge charity. They're national. I was in their regional branch of it. Obviously, that's where I learned about nonprofits. I learned about the specific needs they have and things that were going on. And that time was around 1998, 1999. So if you think about what was happening at that time, that's when websites were getting spun up. A lot of companies had websites, but the nonprofits tend to go a little bit behind on technology things. So United Way at that point of Central Indiana did not have a website. So I created their first website. I had never created a website before. I was just a graphic designer. I was their creative services manager. Created the very first website for them. I had no idea what I was doing. It looked pretty good because I was a graphic designer, but probably not a lot of functionality compared to today's sites. Yeah, but you think about back then and where tech was, and that was just, what, 25 years ago? And then think of where it's at now and the things that have happened, and it's unrecognizable, not just for companies, but nonprofits, everything. It's unrecognizable, especially, digital transformation, the move from having everything in paper-based systems. We were taking donations on paper back then. I mean, all paper. We put a component on the website where people could donate, but really all it was filling out a form. And then we took the form and we used our normal paper processes to process it. And now, I mean, it's completely opposite. Like everything is processed digitally. And then if there's a paper trail that needs to be made, it's made later, right? But it's not just donations like that has done this. It's like donor management. So what people don't realize about nonprofits is donor management and activation of donors and keeping track of donors and doing all that stuff. That is a big part of it. They have a very specific donor base, every nonprofit does, that keeps them going. And you need to know information about that. And technology can allow you to do that. And they've really leaned into that. The successful nonprofits now have leaned into that, into managing your donor base and your volunteer base with digital tools.
I mean, it's definitely evolved throughout the times because, as you mentioned, back then, most of us were really working still on paper and doing everything manually because there weren't websites like there are now that allow you to actually create a GoFundMe page. Shout out to them. You could be a sponsor. Shout out, give us a call.
Absolutely. You think of the rise of GoFundMe, of things like that, where people can activate a network of givers. A network of givers to rally behind a cause or a person or anything like that. And there's proof that that stuff works. There's no other way before technology, before GoFundMe and things like that, for those people to rally like that, except for really boots on the ground grinding. And this has made it so much easier.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Most fundraising back, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was done at a local level. There wasn't, other than maybe phone banks,
Yeah.
unless you had access to something like that, that it was a national initiative, there was really no way for you to fundraise other than in your local community.
Yeah. And if you think about the lessons of brands when it comes to technology, how brands are using data and analytics, how they're using analytics to analyze their audience and their marketplace. And, you think of the big brands, you think of, big clothing brands and other brands, and that they use that stuff. That they knew who their audience is. Think about how that could empower a nonprofit, knowing who their donor base is, being able to communicate more directly with it, not wasting their limited resources on broad
Right.
based communications or broad based advertising. Just how awesome that would be in that segment where we really need to be conscious of budget and saving money.
Yeah, that definitely helps that data-driven decision a little bit better.
Data driven decision. That's exactly
Hmm.
it. You need to make data driven decisions as a business, as any business, in order to push it forward. And nonprofits or charities or the technology could enable and does enable those companies to make the best decisions with their limited funds.
Yeah, I think we've talked there. You mentioned that there's plenty of examples of tech for good. So things
Mm-hmm.
like digital fundraising, AI, and accessibility nowadays. But what really stands out to you is connection.
Johann Hari's quotes. I don't know if he was the originator, but it's attributed to Johann Hari. The opposite of addiction is connection. That's been replayed a lot in a lot of different things. But I think the idea behind it isn't always about addiction. I think connection is the opposite of a lot of things. Does that make sense? I
Hmm.
think that it's the opposite of loneliness. It's the opposite of isolation. It's the opposite of mental health issues. Connection is the opposite of a lot of those things. And the single thing that has caused connection is technology. Technology has fostered a role in creating connection for people more than anything else we've ever seen in my lifetime. I can say that. Technology is a tool that can be used to do this. So for me, being disconnected from society, whether it's from lack of communication, isolation, things like addiction, that is mental health issues, unemployment, homelessness. I think the tools that have been done with the homeless, with phones for the homeless, have been a good example of this. How that technology, how a cellular phone, the apps on the phone, the connection that that has brought to the homeless community through programs. There's some national programs and some state programs that have done work with this is really worth mentioning. I think that if you look into it, I know, and we're in Indiana. I know in Indiana, I think it's something like 70% of the homeless people have a phone, and most of them were provided through the Lifeline program. And then you can look at some of the statistics from it. And the problem before is that a lot of homeless people occasionally had phones. They would run out of minutes, they would die, they would lose them, they would get stolen. So there was a real lack of connection. They weren't connected to society, they weren't connected to the networks that they did have. And it created more problems. It exacerbated addiction. It made things worse for them. And they weren't able to communicate when they had a problem. They couldn't call emergency services. They couldn't call support networks. And I know there was an interesting article in the Indiana Recorder where they went out and were experiencing giving phones to some of the homeless. And almost every single one of them, the first thing they did was either call their mother or a family member because they hadn't been able to do that in so long.
Hmm.
And just that connection of being able to talk to that family member again was so big for them. And it's funny that that's the first thing they wanted to do. Of all the things that we think of doing with our phone, that's probably not what would come to our mind when we first get up in the morning. But that's the type of connection that they're missing, that we have in our lives, and that these people don't have in their lives, that they're missing, and that technology brings. The technology instantly brought that to these people.
So it's empowerment. I think you mentioned something there that really powerful, and that is, what do you do when you first get your phone if you're somebody who's in that situation? And that's call your family. That's let
Mm-hmm.
them know that you're okay. Maybe you are leaving far away from where they are. Maybe you are in a different state. and you just want them to know that you're okay. And that's
Mhm.
empowerment. It just gives them that power to actually let somebody know that they're okay. So you quoted Johann Hari, and that
Mhm.
quote, it's really a powerful thought. So how do you see technology helping people who feel isolated or disconnected, whether that's due to mental health challenges, homelessness, or just lack of access to community?
I love the cell phone program, the Lifeline program. It doesn't just help homeless people, it helps a variety of people. And a lot of programs like that help people who are experiencing domestic violence or domestic instability. Those Lifeline phones help people in those situations, again, connecting them, making them feel not alone, available for them in emergency situations, things like that. But, think about other uses for technology, not, just for people who just have cell phones, like mental health support. I feel like the access to good mental health care is expanding through technology. And I think that that's going to be a real trend that we see. You can see platforms spinning up where you can take counseling online. You can reach an emergency person if you just need to talk to somebody through an
Mhm.
app or through a service. And I think that those services were so far removed from people before, and where technology is bringing it down to where people can connect with those types of services. And I think that's going to be a big thing coming up if we could just bring some of the prices down on it. I think for me, I feel like when I've looked into those things, they're still a little pricey, but I feel like that's coming. At least it's available, and those networks are being built, right? So I really like that. But, a lot of talk is done about social media, and I don't want to get into a discussion about social media and if that helps us or doesn't help us, but it is a part of technology. Technology has brought that to us. And I think there's potential there for using that for good too.
Yeah, and that's actually I was going to ask you about social media because it definitely can become an isolating factor to a lot of people. It can definitely see something, or we can definitely see it, especially in today's youth, where they get so bogged down in it and
Hmm.
they basically just leave the reality that they live in for social media.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
technology obviously can connect us. It can connect us through social media. I mean, even though we're trying to say that social media right now is a little bit of a danger for our youth movement, but
Hmm.
we see that tension every day on social media. So how do you think we can design or use technology in ways to that we truly build community rather than divide it?
And I mean, this is all new. If you think of how long we've had social media, it is not a long time. And when it comes to these things that are new and groundbreaking, it takes a while to develop the guardrails, right? The guardrails for use of this tool, for use of this product. And it's going to take us a little time to figure that out and for people to adjust. What age should we go into these things? That's why there's age limits on things. We don't have that ironed out yet. I think about in the 1930s and the 1940s when atomic energy was this big deal, right? And people didn't understand the dangers of it yet. And
Yeah.
there was a cereal brand that put out radioactive atomic rings, and it had a little piece of radioactive material in it. And when you took
It's
off the
why
cap,
not?
the radioactive material lit up the end. It was not extremely harmful. That type of radioactive material could not penetrate the skin. But you just think of nowadays, no, we're not going to do that. What if somebody swallowed that? I mean, it's like not good. But they didn't understand the guardrails of the technology that they had in front of them, right? They didn't know that could have a lot of dangers in it and that could be really bad. So I think on this social media stuff, we don't understand the guardrails yet. We don't understand the long term effects and the things that we should be doing to try to control it. But I think we will over time. I think part of that is just digital literacy. I think it's education about dangers, how to use things responsibly, limits as we find it out, to educate ourselves about those things. And, for me, I think just remembering our shared humanness, I don't know how else to put it, but our shared humanity. We are all people. We all have
Mhm.
feelings, and just remember that, and when I
Yeah.
see people being bullied, it really hurts me. There's no use for that. We're all human and we are all different. And, we should be celebrating those differences and things like that. And then, obviously balance as we work out the guardrails. We'll figure out balance between things. And I think the pendulum will correct itself a little bit. all this technology is new, all this social media, and we all just swung towards it, right? And I think it's going to swing back and we're going to get more balance to it. We're just, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years into all of this, and it's all new.
Yeah, no, it's definitely all new and we're still getting used to it. And as humans, as you mentioned, we just got to remember that's what we are. And what matters is the connections that we make at a human level. So we just got to continue moving forward and being respectful to one another and continue being who we are. So let's go back to the importance of access, that
Yeah.
tech really connects people only if they can actually use it. What are some of the challenges nonprofits face when it comes to bridging the digital divide, especially for vulnerable or low income groups?
So part of it is economics, affordability of people. You know, if you're a charity and you're building an app for people to sign up for benefits or something like that, you need to be sure of a few things. You need to be sure it's built in a way that they can access it. You know, is it accessible on a phone? Is it also accessible on a 15-year-old PC that may not have been updated very often? You need to worry about those things. You're going to have a large audience with a lot of different resources, and some of them are going to be low resource. So you need to worry about those things. Funding in the world of economics, funding for these things to build an app that has that much variety in it is going to be expensive. It's going to be more expensive than just building one that works on the newest technology. And then I think you have to worry about accessibility. I think you have to worry about making sure that anything you build, any technology you put together, is available to those with disabilities, with visual disabilities or hearing. And I can't say enough about how far technology has come for people with disabilities. I know Moser's done a lot of work with organizations here in Indy to help apps we develop be more
Hmm.
accessible. I know when I was a teenager, I volunteered at a camp for the hearing impaired. And so I was pretty familiar then with the technologies. And back then, if you wanted to get a phone call, and if you got a phone call and you were hearing impaired and you wanted to get it, you know, translated for you, you had to get this other person on the line. And then there's a service, you had to get that person on the line and they had to listen and they had to type it in and you could type back, or it was this whole process and it involved a bunch of things you had to buy to make it happen. And just today, the way that technology has opened up that market for people with hearing disabilities is amazing. And the tools they have at their disposal, and same thing for visual disabilities. So the strides technology has made in those areas is amazing. But when you build something for those markets, you do have to make sure you're building it in a way that those tools can read it and those tools can do it. So that's a whole consideration that has to be taken into consideration when you do products. I think I got a little bit off talking about that, but just basically that's a lot of the things you have to consider and a lot of the areas that I feel like have both come a long way and are just hot button issues.
So before we go, as we look ahead, what excites you the most about the next wave of tech for good? Are there emerging tools or trends that you think could deepen our human connection even more?
I think that that's hard because I think AI is important. And I know that's what everybody expects everybody to say. AI is the answer to everything right now, right? But for me, for me, looking at what AI really is, I think that there is a lot of potential there in helping this because what AI really does is it takes information that's available, pulls it all together, and summarizes it for you, right? And that could help a lot of people if it was packaged in a way that, again, had guardrails in it, that was structured in a way that could get people answers to questions and get them the services they need. Or when you think about mental health apps, things like that, get people the information that they need quickly when they're in crisis or when they're having a problem. That could be used for that. And I think that that's very exciting because I think that that's getting information that our society possesses into the hands of people who need it right when they need it. And that's really what it's about. But for me, I mean, I work with 300 technology professionals every day, even though I work in marketing and sales. I work at a tech company. So I work with these tech people every day. And I think what I'm excited about is how I see these tech people are excited about helping. They want to help their communities. Every app we build, everything we do, it helps our community in different ways. And people get excited about that. And I
Mhm.
like how excited people are to help.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree on the people we work with are really excited, obviously, for a plethora of topics around tech. But I mean, we of course we have to mention AI and the impact that it's having across the board. But it's also having an impact for good. It's also doing some good
Mhm,
things that some of our people are taking advantage of that to help others that might not have the means to get to that technology. So I'm very
mhm.
excited for that too. So I echo those words.
I'm excited about the future and how far we've come in nonprofits and technology and how that's moving along. Having, for me, having seen it from the beginning when there was almost no technology wrapped into that industry, seeing where it's come a really long way, and that I'm excited about that.
Me too. And with that, we'd like to thank Malinda Lowder for joining us again on Ask Andy. Malinda, it's always a pleasure to
Thank
have you.
you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening in to this week's edition of Ask Anything presented by Moser Consulting. We hope you enjoyed listening to Malinda Lowder talk to us about tech for good. Join us next time as we dive even deeper with our resident experts on what they're currently working on. Remember to share your topics with us through our social media. In the meantime, please remember to give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, so long, everybody.